ready to go, and you are ready to write your book in this hour. My name is Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of more than 20 books now and counting. But the cool part about my job, although I am a marketing company and have been since 1987, and in an internet space since literally before the word the internet existed, what I really get to do is I get to work with people to help them write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. There's more than 4,000 people that I've now helped that have helped to bring their message out into the world. And the coolest part about that is that equates to over 1 million people who those books have reached, whose lives have been touched and affected because of that little tiny piece of them that I got to help bring out into the world. It's such an honor to be able to do. And so today we're going to help you be the next person to write your bestseller in just 1 hour. Are you ready to go? All right. Give me a thumbs up or an applause or something to make me feel good about myself. And as people begin to continue trickling in, we are going to get going to write your bestseller in 1 hour. Now, for those of you who decide you want to watch this on the replay, I am recording it for us so that you can come back and watch it, but you need to stick around, especially for the Q&A afterwards. But we are on the screen that says, write your bestseller in 1 hour. You see, of all the people that I've worked with, I remember back to that very first year. There was 156 people we helped in that first year, and that equated to over 189,000 people who got the copy of their book, and that was just on the first day. So when I talk about the 4,000 people now that I've worked with and the millions that they've reached, again, we're just talking about the reach of your book in just even the very first day. As my 20th bestseller says, bestseller is only just the beginning. And we'll do another live event on that sometime. But today we want to talk about how to write your bestseller. There is a formula to it. There are benefits of it to you for doing it. And we want to let you know a few of those benefits and the reasons why, so that you can be not just a book writer, not just a book wisher, not somebody who wants to have a book, but somebody who's written a bestseller. Because I want you to understand as we go through all of this, maybe even jot this down at the top of the paper that you've got. I have this sometimes sitting right in front of me on my desk. Someone is waiting on you. There is somebody who needs to hear your story, your solution, the answers that you have, but they won't get it until you do it. It may be something that they've heard a million times, but just like our kids, you'll say that same thing over and over to them, and then they'll come back from school and be like, my teacher taught me the most amazing thing today in school. And you'll be like, yeah, I've been saying that for years. No, you've never said that ever before. It's just like that. People need you because the way you'll say it, the heart that you say it with, is going to make all the difference for somebody. And it will help you improve your speaking. It will give you better credentials. In fact, best-selling author is the #1 credential, bar none, in the world. My medical doctors will be the first ones to tell you that they get more out of being a best-selling author than having been a doctor in their field for over 20 years. What a great way to be able to get more clients. I've worked with so many authors, and I'm just going to talk to you real quickly about a couple of them. Forrest Fullen and Anthony Steele, they have a company that they run together, fairly large, six-figure company helping people with health and wellness. They created, with their new book, a whole new division of their company and made over $200,000 their first year by having the intentional approach of their book as they put it out. Pastor Andrea Humphrey, whose book was, are you ready for this? Her book was number 84 out of all books on the entirety of Amazon. Now, she had other books that were out, but the day that that book launched, she had people writing her and saying, hey, I didn't even know you had a book. And more importantly, the other books that she had, they began to start selling because she had a marketing plan to go along with her book to make it not just another book, but a bestseller. That's right. You're going to hear me say that bestseller word a lot during the course of this hour. I worked with a gentleman named Stuart Ross. I'm told that all of my friends in England say that he is our Tony Robbins. So for those of you who might be listening in from in or around England, maybe you've heard of Stuart Ross. Of all of the things he had done in his life, the one thing he had never done was written a book, and more importantly, didn't have a bestseller. We helped him write his book, Growth Hacks 10 Groundbreaking Strategies to Scale Your Business Rapidly. And it became, in just a matter of hours, a bestseller. Because becoming a bestseller really, as I said, it's the beginning. It's a marketing strategy to get you the credential to allow you to graduate from the college of who you are and get the external Amazon credential that you are as awesome and amazing as you are.
Steve, can I throw something in there? Would you speak real
Absolutely.
quickly to Carl Michelle and what happened to him with
I
365?
will after this one.
Okay,
Got
okay, okay,
Carl is right after we talk about my good friend, Dr. Alicia Griffith. I actually
okay.
invited Allie to come to this meeting. I don't see her here right now. If you're here, Allie, raise your hand. Dr. Alicia Griffith, who is a medical doctor, has been in her field for over 20 years and helps children and parents with autism. And then her son, after 10 years in that field, was born, guess what? Autistic, right? And so she wrote her book, Amazing Gift. It was not only, of course, a bestseller, but it gave her the ability to get on both Good Morning America and the Today Show. She's had all kinds of national recognition from what she does in the world by just simply putting out that book, talking about that thing that is so close to her, but she also happens to be an amazing talent at. And then, yes, of course, Lonnie, I knew you were going to want me to say this. I had to make sure I talked about Carl Michelle. Carl Michelle was actually offering to go to schools to speak for free. He has this amazing book. It's called 365 Hip Hop. And 365 Hip Hop, he takes songs from 50 Cent, Jadakiss, Charlemagne, Common, Lauryn Hill, people that you would never think have any redeeming qualities. They're not thinking about that even when they write their songs. And he will find this nugget of truth in it. And he wrote the whole entire book. It's a daily, so that each day you can learn something new and grow and be motivated. And his book, of course, became a bestseller. But more importantly than that, the book launched in January of 2016, and it is still in the top 10 list here. What is that now? 7 years later. His book is still reigning. He's been to Jadakiss's birthday. He's been on MTV a couple of times. He's been on radio, all over the place. All kinds of cool, amazing endorsements, and a whole lot of really interesting things just because it became a bestseller. But because I started here, let me finish there. He went from not having people return his calls when he offered to speak for free to being booked within 3 months after his book came out. He was booked out more than 6 months in advance at $2,000 per speaking gig. That is an example of the power and the impact that your bestseller can have for you. Because, and I want you to remember this always in your mind now, say this with me, we don't just write books, we write bestsellers. That's right, bestsellers. You're not just going to write a book, you're going to write a bestseller. It's a formula. It's much, this is the part of the discussion where it's like I just am going to tell you that it was your parents who put the presents under the Christmas tree. Santa didn't actually slide down the chimney. There's a formula to it that's based on what consumers want, what they need, and how to be able to take that one thing that you know you need to share with the world in a systematic way to predictably get you the result of your book launching and on your launch day being a bestseller. Now, what kind of book should we write, Lonnie, right? Should we write this great big tome, write War and Peace, spend the next 10 years writing a book? Or how about we take one point, we make it really clear, and we give people a clear action from that one point. You see, what Amazon calls a short read, that's very hot. Those are popular right now. They are the most highly in demand, most read books on any of Amazon. And keep in mind, Amazon sells 95-ish% of all the books that are sold in the entire world. They did a little bit of research to find out what kind of books people want. That's why they created a whole new category just for short reads. They found out this: if your book, and I'm talking about the print length of your book, is 100 pages or less, more than 60% of the people that get the book will read it and finish it. If your book is between 101 and 200 pages, then it drops to about 20% of the people that will finish your book. Now, if your book goes over 200 pages, how many people have told you your book needs to be 350 pages to be a real book? Here's what Amazon found. If your book is more than 200 pages, it's less than 3% of the people that read it that will ever finish your book. And in marketing, because I told you I'm a marketing company, what we know for sure is that at the end of the book, you want to invite them to do something more with you. What if they never get to the end? So again, we want people to read our book, to get the information they need, to grow from it, to finish it, and to be able to have a next step with us rather than having less than 3% of the readers ever even finish the book. So what are some examples of short reads? Now I can tell you first off, I almost spilled the beans on this a couple of minutes ago. Some of you maybe have heard of Stephen King. Stephen King wrote a short read. It's 35 pages. In fact, it might only be 25. You'd have to go check that on me. It's called Guns by Stephen King. And he wrote it just to see if people would buy short books because he was hearing so much about it. And guess what? It became a massive bestseller, millions upon millions of copies of the little book that he wrote. Some of you maybe have heard of the speaker trainer, John Maxwell. John C. Maxwell has a large organization teaching people about leadership and training, and he has over 100 books that he's written. All of them a few years ago would have been the typical 300 plus page book. But now he's discovered the power of short reads. And what he does is he now takes the books and he breaks up what would have been a chapter or a couple of chapters into subjects and then different colors. So he'll have a whole series, and the people in his organization will actually refer to it as the green book or the blue book or the purple book. And they'll take a topic like how successful people win and make that the whole book. And it's less than 100 pages, and he's put out a whole bunch of short reads since then. Now, if you're really into marketing like I am, maybe you've heard of, an obscure gentleman named Seth Godin, was the original marketing director for Yahoo back in the day, and is a very widely known, very famous, marketing guru, if you will. Seth Godin has written more than 20 books now. Every single one of them is considered to be a short read. A few of them are New York Times bestsellers. 5 of his books are actually in that official Amazon short read category of less than 100 pages. And he even has a book called V for Vulnerable, which is only 64 pages long. In fact, I'll give you another example of a short book. Has any of you ever heard of an obscure story called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is originally based off of a book, a story inside of an anthology book that was only 56 pages long. It is perhaps one of the most prolifically used stories that have been redone in different story arcs and movies and episodes of television shows and all of that than anything ever written off of that little 56-page book. If you're into self-help books, you've probably heard of Brene Brown. She's even had a few of her books promoted by Oprah. Now, her books, some of them you'll get them and you'll find that they're about 150 or 160 pages long. Her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, is 160 pages long, but when you open it up, what you discover is that the top margin is really big. The side margins are more than 1 inch long. There's a big, huge footer at the bottom, and each of the chapters starts about halfway down the page. So if you were to put it in a tighter format than what she did, it would probably be less than 100 pages. But it was actually the editor's best book of the month, both on the New York Times as well as several other places. I'm going to do one more book here for you. For those of you that have ever spent any time in corporate, maybe you're familiar with a book called Who Moved My Cheese? Maybe you've gotten given it to you by a trainer or somebody, and they've told you you need to read this book. You were perhaps thrilled to learn that this book was only 95 pages long, that it's in large print, and that it's very simple English and easy to read. This book has sold over 28 million copies, and it's in 44 different languages, all off of 95 pages in large print. A bestseller, a short read, can be very powerful. And just to prove it, a marketing company wrote a book called Marketing in Less Than 1,000 Words, a 6-page book, 999 words exactly. It's sold over 40,000 copies worldwide. It's, of course, a bestseller, #1 bestseller. And also, as a marketing expert, I can tell you that it's one of the best books on marketing I've ever read. There were some really cool points that I was like, okay, I really learned some things in that. I really appreciated it. So what should we write? Are you ready? You got your pen and you're ready to go? So let me ask you the question. Jot a little note to yourself. What do you want to be known for? What is the #1 thing above everything else that you want to be known for? Think about that one for a second. There's all these things swirling out there around in you. And sometimes we struggle with our purpose. What are we going to be? What are we going to write about? Maybe the question is, what is that thing that you're so passionate about that you're always talking about it? You know, if you have kids, that whenever you bring it up, they roll their eyes because there you go again talking about that thing. If you're struggling with, well, what is that one thing? Then maybe an easier way to think about it is, what are the programs? What are the things that I'm selling? What am I focused on for this year? Maybe even make it a little bit smaller. What's the thing that I want to focus on just this next month? What's that one thing? Pick something. We can always change it later if we need to. But if you start off with a target and you aim at a target, you have a chance of hitting the target. If you aim at nothing, you're probably going to hit nothing, especially if there's nothing out there to aim at to begin with. Something to think of is if you were sitting next to somebody in an airport, your ideal perfect client, you know, that person that you know you can help. What is the one thing that you want to make sure that you tell that dear precious soul that you know you can help? All of you have something uniquely wonderful inside of you, something that the world needs to hear, they need to know. And I encourage you to pick it and then to share it with the world. Okay, we've got your paper. You've got at the top of it some kind of a concept of what you're going to write. Now I want you to draw right in the middle of that a big circle. Okay? I want that to be your bullseye. We need the circle. This is going to be where inside of it we're going to put a topic or a title for what we're going to write this book about. Okay? If you're struggling with it and you still are kind of not sure what you want to write, here would be my suggestion to you. If you could go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, to when you were a young adult, and you could give the young adult version of yourself one piece of advice, what is the one thing that you would tell them? And I'm not saying that you want to change your life. Some people will be like, well, I've had a great life. But we all know things that we've learned over the course of the years of our lives that we really, really would have loved to have known at 18 or 20. All right, so in the middle of that circle, you're going to write down your target, topic, or title. And again, it may change later, but we need to have something to aim at. Okay? Now from that circle, I want you to draw 4 lines, one going north, one going south, one going east, and one going west. Or if you will, up, down, left, and right. Okay? Does that make sense? So it's a circle in the middle with lines going one up, one to the right, one down, one to the left. Okay? This is going to be our 4 hubs. And I want you to understand, we're going to actually teach you fiction or nonfiction, any kind of book in the entire world. This is I literally took thousands upon thousands of books and did research because I'm a weird geek like that. This is the basis for every book in the entire world. It's based off of these 4 concepts. Okay? So let's start with the line that's going to the right, going to the east. Okay? Everybody can picture that? The 4 spokes on your wheel, you're going on the one to the right. And on that, we want to talk about you. You see, people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And if we don't establish know, like, and trust with our readers, it doesn't matter how amazing what we have to say is, because they're never bought into it. They probably will never even finish it because they didn't get the buy-in as to why you have what you're saying. We didn't earn the right to be able to teach them what we want to teach them. So we're going to take a little bit of time. Now, for some people, especially if you're writing a legacy book, this may be all or most all of your book. But for others of you, it may be a little tiny short, just a couple of paragraphs. It may be an introduction that is, a page or 2 formatted. It's fine. There's no right or wrong answers on any of these sections. They're just how a book breaks down. If you were thinking about this from a fiction standpoint, for those of you that want to be fiction authors, this is where we introduce the primary character, the protagonist of our book. And we need the people to buy into the life and the misery or the excitement or the whatever of that person. Even in a children's book, we want to introduce the Cat in the Hat. We want to bring him out as soon as possible so that the kids are laughing at the Cat in the Hat and how silly he is. We want people to buy into it. Okay? It's going to break down into this 3 simple steps. We're going to say, this is who I am today, but it wasn't always that way. And this is what I learned. So this is what my life's like now. Now it's not about, look at how much money I have in the bank. I drive a Maserati or, whatever kind of thing. It's more about, I'm going to teach you to get to a point, and this is what life looks like when you know how to do that thing. Your life is as the example of it. And I'm not saying that you need to be perfect to write the book. It's just purely a matter of, this is the point that I've reached so far, and I can tell you this is the rock that I'm standing on today, and offer you a hand up out of the swamp that you're in onto this dry land that I've found. This is who I am today. But it wasn't always that way. Here's where it gets a little tough for a lot of us, and that's called being vulnerable and valuable. We have to be willing to dive back into that swamp, not necessarily physically, but emotionally, to let people know that we understand where they are. Not just, have you ever had anybody tell you, oh, I totally understand what you mean? And you knew the minute they said that they had no clue what you were talking about. You're going through something, and they had no frame of reference for it at all. But they just happenstancely said, oh, I totally get exactly what you're talking about. We've all been through that. What I want you to be able to do for the person who's going through something you've come through is to share just a little bit of what you went through so they can know they're not alone. See, the worst problem with the stuff that each of us is going through is that when we go through it, we feel like we're totally alone. Like I'm the only person that's ever experienced this. I saw this the most clearly when my mother-in-law was in chemo, sitting in a room. She was going literally then 7 days a week to chemo, sitting in a room with people who each of them were also in chemo, a whole room around the wall. There was probably any given time 15 to 20 people in the room. And when my mother-in-law would fall asleep or get engrossed in the book she was reading, I sometimes would go over to the people who were sitting by themselves and chat with them because I felt for them. And the story was always the same. They felt completely isolated and alone. And even in a room of people who were all going through the exact same thing they felt like they were the only one who had ever been through it. See, when we're vulnerable like that, we can let people know and see you're not alone. I'm walking this path with you. I may only be 1 step, 5 steps, 10 steps ahead of you, but I can show you that there's some rocks to step on that I didn't know about and help you be able to have this journey be a little bit faster, a little bit easier, or at least have the comfort of knowing somebody's going through it with you. And then, of course, after that, we want to talk about what we discovered. What did we learn? How did we lead to the place where we now have the ability and the desire to want to teach them this one thing we're going to teach them? So on our first line going to the right, we have at the top of the line, we have this is, who you are and why. And then we have 3 things coming off of it. I do them as 3 lines. One is, this is who I am today. One is, this is what I went through. And the third one is, and this is what I learned. You can think of it as the best stuff about being me now, the worst stuff that I went through that I can relate to you with, and why is it that I know I'm supposed to share this with you? Okay? Now I'm going to move on to the next section. I need you to raise your hands if you really are just lost and stuck. We're going to do Q&A at the end, but if you just totally don't understand what I'm talking about, I want to make sure that we've made what I'm saying here clear, okay? We're going to move to section 2. This is the line going straight down, going south, if you will, depending on whether you want to think about it as a compass or the direction of your paper. Okay? Section 2 is the problem that we're going to solve. What does this solve? What is the thing we want to teach them? There's an old concept in speaking that's about taking and telling the people, this is what I'm going to tell you, and then telling them that, and then telling them after you told them what you told them. That's a basic outline. I don't even remember the first time I heard somebody teach that in a speaking class. What we want to talk about in section 2 is the problem that we're going to solve. We want to start off by letting them know that if they do this, here's what we can solve. Here's an answer for you. I love using this example because it's so ludicrous. Because people often say to me, well, the thing that I'm really good at is it's something everybody's great at. And we diminish ourselves because we don't see how amazingly cool it is for just how good you are at what you're good at. So I always use the example of dishes because most of the people that I know, most of the people in my life know how to do dishes. I grew up in a household with a mother who is an absolute expert in dishes. She was the oldest daughter of 6 kids, so she had done a whole lot of dishes before she ever left home, and then she had 3 boys, and so she did a whole lot of dishes after, and I always just thought everybody knew how to do dishes. It's the most simple thing in the entire world, and yet what I learned was there's some people that not only don't know how to do them, they just don't even do them. And I'm not talking about those of us who, for lifestyle choices, I spent the better part of the last 3.5, 4 years pretty much eating off of paper plates because I decided for myself that I didn't need to wash dishes, that I wanted to eat off of paper plates. That's a whole different thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who, when you go to their house at Thanksgiving, I actually had a mother-in-law like this, okay? Go to their house on Thanksgiving. When you come back to their house at Christmas, before you can start making Christmas dinner, you have to clean up the entire kitchen from Thanksgiving. I know, most of you are disgusted just as much as I was shocked and appalled about that at the time. But there are people, I even knew somebody who dishes literally caused a PTSD event for them because of some early childhood trauma that they had. And they went through a training that helped them learn how to be able to turn dishes into the sanctuary time of their day. There was now nothing better than the time that they got to do dishes. They got special dish soap, and they made a playlist of songs that encouraged them. And there was a rule in the house that when mom's doing the dishes, you're not even allowed in that area. And she had special lighting and everything. And it was a perfect sanctuary. And dishes became her respite for the whole entire day. Now, again, it may seem like for most of us where we just go out, we do the dishes, and then they're done, like not a big deal. But for her, learning how to do that, it was the difference literally between life and death for her, between being traumatized literally every day, sometimes multiple times a day, for doing something that was the most simple. So never let yourself think that the thing that you want to teach somebody is too small, or everybody knows it, or everybody else, or there's a million books on it. All you want to do is teach the person that thing that's on your heart. Help them learn and grow. So we want to tell them, what is it I'm going to teach you? And then we want to just be good teachers and teach them. It doesn't have to be hard. It could be something really simple. How many of you could even raise your hands now, just to give your hand a break, or you can push the button on the thing and actually raise your hands in the room. How many of you have ever heard that you're supposed to drink X amount of ounces of water a day, anywhere from 60 to 100 ounces, right? Here's the thing. In order to be able to drink that amount of water, there's this hugely huge thing that a lot of us that work from home or even work behind a desk all day long, we all fall in the trap of, and that's called, there is no such thing as magic water that magically floats across the room and comes to our desk. And so the concept of drinking water can be as simple as, I've got a refrigerator, right now I do actually literally have a refrigerator full of water bottles that are chilled and ready for me to drink. But if I don't get up and go get the water bottle, it's never going to magically appear here on my desk. And so it could be as simple as a teaching about the concept of step one is you've got to turn away from the computer. Turn your body completely away from it. How many of us have fallen into that trap? Where you just, but I got to answer this email. Oh, now I got that Facebook message. And you just do one more thing and one more thing. And then that refreshing drink that you've had, that thing that you should be doing, you just keep not doing because one more thing just keeps happening. So you turn away from the computer. You walk across the room. Well, I should even add another step in there. You stand up out of your chair. Because a lot of times you turn the chair and then you see something out of the corner of your eye and then you turn your chair back and you still don't get out to go get the water. All right? And it just goes on. And so I'm not going to go into all the steps of that. I think all of us know how to be able to stand up and walk, go to the kitchen and get a bottle of water. But there are steps for it. And we want to teach the people. It doesn't matter how simple it is. It's like the example I was using before about the dishes. If the dishes are something that isn't fun for you, what are things you can do to make it fun? Special scented soaps, lighted mood candles. Make all of the children go outside and play the whole time you're doing it. Whatever it might be. Back in the day, I know that, people used to watch and I don't see people talking about them as much as they used to, but people used to watch a favorite soap opera or those kind of things while they were doing dishes. Whatever that might be. It's just a matter of helping the person be able to see it. Okay? All right, again, I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing here and that before I move on, that what I'm saying makes sense. And all you need to do at this point is have the notes for yourself, whether you're writing it out completely or you're just making little notes that will be the outline that you'll then flesh out. I want to make sure that you understand these steps. Because next we're going to move on to section 3. Now this is going to be our line going west or to the left. Okay, we're on our third line, section 3. Now this is the takeaway. This is the what is the downside. There is nothing more powerful in a book, fiction or nonfiction, than the downside to things, than the downturn, than if you're doing a 3-act play, act 2. This is the time when our hero is faced up against all odds, and will they live? Those of you that have seen Star Wars, maybe you can think of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Chewbacca. Well, I guess Princess Leia's there too. trapped trapped in the trash compactor, and it's about to squeeze them to death. And C-3PO and R2-D2 are outside, and they hear screams, and they think they're going to die. Now, I was 10 when I saw that in the theater, and I remember freaking out that they were actually going to die, because I was 10, right? And I had to literally remember a picture that I had seen I hadn't seen that scene in the movie yet, and Luke and Han are both in it, and so then I was able to realize, oh, it's going to be okay. You see, we have to take it away from them in order for them to understand. We have to have that downside in order for it to be real. Angelica, I'm assuming this question was directly to me. It popped up here on my screen. We're talking about, of the 4 lines, up, down, left, and right. We're talking about the one going to the left, to the west, to the to the left side. And if that wasn't a live question you're asking me, I just answered it for somebody. So what is the downside? What are you going to stay stuck in if you continue doing things the way that you've always done? The old statement, the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing and expect to get different results. We have to remind the people, we have to empower them with choice, let them decide to do whatever they want to do, but also help them understand what's staying stagnant, what's staying where they are, what impact that's going to have on their life. Maybe it'll mean less money or more stress. Maybe you can directly show them how staying doing that thing will cause their business to fail. Maybe you even have statistics of people you've worked with or research that you've done that can show people that do this, they end up with this particular thing. We're not wanting to be cruel because we want to stay in vulnerable and valuable space, but we do want to give them the information so that they're empowered to make a decision, so that they know that they can do it. But they also know that if they don't do it, this is what they're signing up for. There's an old saying that says, if you don't choose to do something, you're choosing. And that's very true. And sometimes inaction is the biggest choice that all of us make. And often that inaction leaves us to the worst of all circumstances, the worst downside of all, and that's staying stuck right where you are. If nothing changes, often nothing changes. All right, so now for our third line, and again, in each of these, I draw 3 lines off of each one of them because we pretty well are talking about 3 things off of each of them. The concept of this is based in the statement, I wish I would have done that sooner. I wish I would have known that sooner. For some of you, you've coached enough people that you've heard people say to you, I wish I would have met you earlier. I wish I would have known this before. I know for me, when I work with people, the saddest and the hardest time is when I have to tell them something that if only we would have met before, they wouldn't have spent the money, spent the time, maybe both, because they just didn't simply know better. And they worked in the best of concepts, but they didn't get to where they were. Again, going back to what I said earlier, maybe this is the advice that you wish you would have given yourself. That person that you dated or married or spent way too much time with in your 20s. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but come on, people, we all know somebody that we would like to go back to the 20-year-old version of ourselves and tell them, that inkling that you had in your mind and heart and soul that person wasn't going to be good for you, guess what? You were right. Right? We've all been there. So it's just simply a matter of what could a person have and what will they keep if they decide to hold on tightly to it. We're just empowering them. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Explaining the downside to your reader? All right, now we're going to move to section 4. It's the line going straight up the page, headed north. I hope that makes sense. We're going straight up to the top. Section 4. what are the key things that they can do right now, today? What can you do right now, today? Okay, so we want to leave people always, and this is a marketing principle, you always want to give people a next step, but it's very important when we write a book. We want to leave the person in action. We want to give them something that they can do. And there are two primary pieces of that. There are the actions that they can do. They can literally sit down the book and they can take this action right now. Again, if we go back to my example of drinking more water, we can tell them, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to get up and go get a drink of water. With that said, I'm going to drink water right now. Thank you for the pause for a second. And encourage them. If you're going to start on the habit of drinking X amount of ounces of water every day, it starts right now. Get up and go get some water and drink it right now. Don't wait for 5 minutes. Don't wait forever. Do it now. So whatever that one thing, some of the authors that I've worked with, step one is begin to journal every day. I have a friend of mine that her step one for all of her clients is she has them take a 30-day challenge where every single day they write down 10 things that they're grateful for that day. Now, I can tell you, all of us have had bad days, and when I've done this myself, there can be some days where you're like, I don't know that I have 10 things that I'm really thankful for today. And you actually have to take some time and stop and think. And it's really a good way to keep you in happiness and gratitude by stopping and really thinking about what's good in your day. So what are the things? Now, I'm going to tell you that we want to make it a thing. So I said earlier, you take one point, you make it really clear, you give them a clear action from that point. Okay, if there's a second point, then really that's book 2. However, this point may have up to 5 steps in doing that one thing. So if we're going to use the concept of getting water from the refrigerator, turn away from the computer, stand up, walk across the room, open the refrigerator door, get the bottle of water. Drink the water immediately. Okay, now I didn't count if that was 5 or if I cheated and went to 6. But you get the concept. We want to make it really easy for them. All right? We need to give them something that's immediately actionable, and that we tell them step by step exactly how to take that immediate action, because people need the dots, especially when they've been put in this very vulnerable state themselves, and especially after they've come out of sharing with them the downside and them having the reality check of what life's going to continue like if they don't make that change right now. If they don't start doing sit-ups right now, if they don't start eating better right now, if they don't, whatever it might be. And then we want to give them something to empower themselves right now. Okay? Now, there may be, in addition to that, an ongoing for the next 30 days, for example, like I used my friend Judy's thing that she does, that after you do it the first time, it's like, now do that same thing every day for the next 30 days. All right? But we want to keep it really simple for them. Our second action is the more long-term action, and that's what's the next step with me? What is the thing that they can do that's next? What can they build on top of this little thing we taught them that will give them, to quote The Year Without Santa Claus from when I was a kid, to be like Winter Warlock and put one foot in front of the other. Because soon you'll be walking across the floor. That's what it takes. We helped them take one step, and we're going to tell them where they can go to get the next step. And in that, we usually give them a link to our page, or to our next book, or to sign up for our newsletter, or those kind of things. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So let's just review over all 4 of those lines real quick, so that in case you have any questions about any of those 4 sections. Section 1, we talked about who you are today and how you discovered this thing, what you went through to get you to the point where you now have the ability to teach it. Section 2 is, what does this solve? Teaching them the solution to the problem that you've introduced to them. Maybe even introducing them the problem and then teaching them the solution. Number 3 is, what is the downside if they don't do this? What's going to happen if they choose not to? Empower them with choice, but let them know what they're choosing. And then step 4 is, what can they do today and what action can they take with you beyond this book? Now we got one last thing we're going to do before we're done writing our book, and that's we want to have stories in our book. Much of what you've put down in your notes to yourself right now are probably more facts and figures and specific things. Now what I want you to do is go through each of the sections. So what is a story about yourself that you could tell, that you can be very vulnerable with about the time? Maybe it was the time you were lost, left in the store. Maybe it was the time when you got in the big fight with your brother and you spent the whole entire day locked in your room, convinced you were never going to go out of that room ever again. Maybe it was something that happened just yesterday. Maybe it was a divorce you went through. Now, I'm not just talking about telling them what, but I'm talking about telling an insightful story, because it's through stories that we identify with people. I can think of some of the books that I've done and people talking about not just saying, hey, I was homeless, but talking about what it was like to live in their car. I have a friend of mine that just recently was homeless in Las Vegas, and then her car broke down. And so she not only had nothing, had no way of getting around, but through the process of that, all of the things that she owned in the entire world were taken away with that car and were impounded. And she was living on the streets of Las Vegas in shelters and things like that, having to literally start from absolute nothing and start over again. And of course, it's her story to tell, so she could go in much deeper detail. But it's things like that that really help bring it home as to what that's really like. Again, we want to be vulnerable in that story and in all of our stories. In section 2, we want to put down a story that identifies the thing we're teaching. This is how I learned it. I remember when I was going through learning that, and I remember that I used to really struggle with the drinking water every day. And I would come to the end of the day and I would realize that I was feeling weak and dehydrated. And I'd think back and I'd realize that I hadn't. Or I realized that all I ever drank was sodas. I don't know about any of you. I'm about 4 or 5 years almost completely soda free. I do every once in a while drink one, but very rarely these days. I was the kind of guy that drank a lot of Mountain Dew back in the day, okay? And I had to come face to face with the fact that if I didn't start drinking water and stop drinking that sugary liquid all day long, that it was going to have even more serious, even more permanent effects on me. And I had to make the change. And I had to, make that shift. And so we share that story with people. We share with them the thing that we went through. In section 3, we want to have a story. And again, that story often is about the client that you worked with that said, oh, I wish I would have only learned this sooner. Oh, where have you been all of my life? Or maybe the story is the story that you would tell that young version of yourself. If I could go back in time and talk to the 16-year-old version of me, this is what I'd say to me. I remember what I was like at 16, and here's what I was going through, and this is the choice that I made. And I'd like to help you not make that. If you're writing books for teens, those can be really powerful sometimes. And then in section 4, we still want a story because we want to tell them it's like, the reason why I know that doing this simple action works is because that's what I now have as a habit every day in my life. Every day I end my day with my 10-thing list of gratitudes, or every day I start my day by doing my gratitude journal, or whatever that might be. And we can share a story from our own life that makes it real, and it makes us real to the people. All right, So we've jotted down an additional story or a reminder to ourselves of what story we're going to put. And then guess what? Congratulations. You just created a rough draft for your book. You've literally just written an entire book in this last hour. Now, there's people like Lonnie in the world that are story development editors that can help you up-level it and make it even better than what you've already done. But you've literally taken the entirety of a story and you've written an entire book. You have it all right now. Now, you may be saying to me, Steve, I don't have a full book here. But I can tell you what, here's the secret. It's called speaking to write. If you take all those notes that you've done and you turn on an audio recorder or go on to Zoom, I mean, especially if you have the version of Zoom like I do where it transcribes for you, or you record it and have a Word document transcribing it while you're doing it, or you send that recording to a transcriptionist, just by simply speaking out all the things that you have those notes for, you will literally just talk out your whole book. And again, you're going to bring Alani or other people like that in to help you be able to edit that book and make sure that sentences start with capital letters and all the periods and the commas are in the right place. But that is the best way to write a book. When you start writing a book and you start talking about, Steve, how is it that you wrote your 20th international bestseller in 2 days from writing to full conclusion of all the content being done now? There's about 2 more weeks in there back and forth in editing and stuff and in creating the cover. But how do you do that? I did it the same way I'm suggesting to you. Open up a Zoom and just start talking. Start going through those. Now, I can interview myself. I can just ask myself on the fly all of these things that I've been teaching you here. But that's all that you do. And it makes it a very vulnerably authentic book. It makes it very conversational style. In fact, my senior editor will tell you it will help you be able to create a book that's in MLA format, meaning conversational English, rather than AP format, which is often when you send it to an editor, you come back and you feel like your book now sounds robotic. We don't want that. We want a person, the best win in the world is when somebody says, I was reading your book and I could hear your voice. I could hear you talking to me through your words. So now the question is, now that you've written a book, what are you going to do with your book? Because the book is only as good as you share it with the world. And as I said a couple of times before, someone is waiting on you. Somebody made a bad choice today, yesterday, last week, last month, for the last decade, because you haven't shared with them that thing that you do so easily, that bullseye in the middle of your target may not have even been the thing you put down. Because it's so easy, everybody must know how to do it. And yet for somebody, the explanation of that, how to get up and get a glass of water, or how to do dishes, or the most simple of things that you're passionate about, for them it's life. It changes their world when you just share that thing that you do so powerfully. You just showing up, being you in the world. Whether your book is 10 years old, if you've already got your book written, or worse yet, if your book has been written for 10 years and it's not out there, or you're at the place where you've sat through this whole entire session, I've seen people do it, and you didn't take any notes, or you're anywhere else in the middle, we're here to help. We can help you. The question is, are you ready? Are you ready to share yourself with the world, to make the difference that only you can make? Because nobody can be you. Nobody can share you with the world. And there are people whose lives you're meant to change. Again, somebody's waiting on you. And their lives will change when you share you with the world. You don't just write this book now, but you put it out. So I've got some things to help you out with that. And I have a full course of programs that I have. I have a done for you program. We'll come in and pretty much do your book for you. We have a done with you program where we will help you write the book. We have a marketing you program where we can take a book that's an existing book that you already have and help you put it out. And we have a taught to you program. And that's where we will actually help teach you how to be able to write your book, how to make it powerful, how to do the interview, how to pull all of it out of you. In fact, I put together a really cool program for you. I want you to know this is usually a $2,500 to $3,000 program that I usually do. There are, and I have a full class in my Taught to You program that is 75 individual little lessons. Now, not all of them are long. Some of them are only a minute or two of work. But there are 75 steps between here and having your book completely published if you know everything that I do for people. But I made it really simple for you. If you go to Write In For, that's WRITEIN and the number 4, writeinfor.com. We're going to take each of these 4 sections that we've been talking through, and we're going to dive into them deeply. We are going to go into each of those sections. We're going to spend 2 hours, 1 day a week for the upcoming 4 weeks. We're going to start on the 12th because next week is the 4th of July. And I know everybody's going to be thinking about the 4th of July, even still on the 5th. So we'll start on July the 12th. And each of the weeks, 2 hours, Wednesday at 5 p.m. So the same time this thing started, we're going to go through each of those sections. I'm going to answer all your questions. I'm going to help you write it. I'm even going to do live on the spot interviews. I have a really fun gifting. It's one of the things that I can't teach you, that it's just cool that I get to do it. I have the capability for you to give me some information, and then I can kind of on the fly really write it and speak it out to you. Again, it's not one of the things I can teach you. It's just a wonderful talent that I've got. And we can help you write an intro for your book and things like that. And we can record that and actually give you the recording. Write In For, that's the number 4.com. Now, like I said, this is normally a $2,500 to $3,000 program. I'm making it available to you today for only $997. I'm hoping that all of you will join, because all of you I know have spent the whole time here feverishly working on and taking the notes. And I want to make sure that you don't just take the notes and then they sit on your desk, but that we go through the whole process. I'm giving you a really cool bonus. I will actively participate in the launch of your book. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to launch your book like I do for my clients, but I will actively share it to my group of people and help you with the launch of your book. If you join that, that's a free bonus from me to you. And I'm also bonusing you a 30-minute call with me anytime during those 4 weeks to have a one-on-one if you need extra help getting your book done or planning out the marketing strategy. Now, each of those calls, typically I charge clients $1,000 just for that call. That's another free bonus for you. I'm going to do all of that for you because I want to see every single one of you that's on live or listening to the replay. I want to see every single one of you not just write a book, but write a bestseller. So I'm asking you, please, 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 go to writeinfor.com. That's WRITEIN, the number 4.com. Right now, sign up for that course. Join in with us. The world is waiting. Somebody is waiting on you.